Welcome to Math Mini Lessons. This is lesson 96, using an explicit rule to generate a sequence. Here's our criteria for success: to be able to substitute the given term number and use the order of operations to find the nth term, as well as creating a sequence when giving an explicit rule. So what is a sequence? When we think of sequences, we think about sets of numbers and some type of pattern happening. And it's very similar to this. When you were younger, you probably did things such as this, like a pattern study, where you were given a figure and you had to figure out how was your pattern changing. What was the change, and that's why I'm using the triangle, over each stage. So let's say I wanted you to notice what's happening to the fish and what's happening specifically with the number of orange tiles. You would be able at a young age to count, well, here I have 2, 4, 6. So at each stage, the number of orange tiles increases. And you would use that information to figure out what the next stage would be. So that on this next stage, you would have 8 orange tiles. And all that is coming from the changes you're noticing. So that was when you were little. You've been thinking algebraically from a very young age. Once you got to middle school, you learned to write it on a table. Now that we're in algebra, we're still going to put it into a table, but watch how I'm going to relate it almost as a function. So here I'm going to put the stages and connect it to the number of orange tiles. And as always, just like when you were younger, we're going to try and figure out, could you figure out a rule that would help you predict the number of tiles at any stage? So let's go into our notes now and think about this and capture the language like an Algebra 1 student. A sequence is a list of numbers in a specific order, and each element of that sequence is called a term. So instead of talking about stages now, I'm explaining it as a term. An explicit rule for a sequence defines the nth term of a function. And explicit rules can be used to find any specific term in the sequence without finding the previous term. So for example, the fish, I had to look at each one and figured out what the next one would be. And when you were younger, you needed to see that. You always had to see the number before it, and you just kept on adding to. But what if I wanted the 152nd term in the sequence? Could you figure that out? As a little kid, that would be hard. Now that we're in algebra, we can do this type of mathematics as long as we created an explicit rule. So let's look at this rule. F of n is equal to n squared plus 1. We could use this rule to figure out the next set of numbers in the sequence. So let's do that. Let's use this rule and let's try and figure out the first 4 numbers in the sequence. All you would do is for f of n, for the nth term, I'm just going to substitute n. So f of 1 is equal to 1 squared plus 1. F of 2 is equal to 2 squared plus 1, and so on. And now that I have those numbers, all I could do is substitute and now evaluate to find f of n. So when n is 1, f of n would be equal to 2. When n is 2, f of n would be equal to 5. When n is 3, f of n is equal to 10. And when n is 4, f of n is equal to 17. So this would represent the first 4 numbers in my sequence. Hit pause and jot this down into your notes. Once you have an explicit rule, you can figure out the number for any n in the sequence. So for example, in this model, I have f of n is equal to n squared plus n plus 1. So if I wanted a 10th term, f of 10, all I'm going to do is substitute and evaluate. So f of 10 is equal to 111. Hit pause and jot this down into your notes. We've done tons of substitution and evaluation, so hit pause and solve this for your guided practice. What would f of 5 be using this rule? All right, if you evaluated correctly, you would get 78. So check that off in your notes. If you have this the right answer, keep going to your checkpoint. If not, let's evaluate. So you would have f of 5 is equal to 3 times 5 squared plus 3. I have to do my exponent first, so 3 times 25 plus 3, and now I can multiply 75 plus 3, and finally I would evaluate to just get 78. And that's it. It's very short, it's very quick and to the point. In this lesson, you're going to be given an explicit rule and you're going to be asked to find a specific term using that rule. So just substitute and evaluate. That's it for today's lesson, Math Marbles. I will see you in the next one. Be well.